Hello and welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Komet and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hey, Scott.
Hi, Jason. How's it going? You keeping cool this week?
Yeah, you know what? The pod cave is nice and cool. It's in the basement, so it's very nice down here. So it's in the wintertime, it can get a touch chilly, but right now, perfect.
That's good to hear. I can't say the same for myself. I think my house is about 26 degrees right now. We've only got the one portable air conditioner that we keep in my son's nursery, so he gets to be nice and cool, and my wife and I kind of suffer through the heat waves. But trying not to complain. I've been, I was really itching for spring weather, and I guess now we're getting more like summer weather, but it's better than -30.
Now that we've talked about the weather, why don't we talk about the podcast? So, Scott, if you are a new listener to this podcast, what is the YYC Soccer Podcast all about?
So we talk about soccer at all levels through a specifically Calgary-focused lens. So we talk a lot about the city's two professional soccer teams, those being Cavalry FC and the Calgary Wild. But we also talk about lower levels of soccer, including, at this time of year, League One Alberta. And in the fall, we talk a lot about the local post-secondary teams from Calgary. We also talk about players from Calgary who are doing cool things, playing professionally overseas, that kind of thing. So it's a soccer podcast that focuses entirely on or is related to the city of Calgary.
And this week, our topics will include Cavalry FC. We'll preview their match versus Forge on Saturday afternoon. Our other pro team in town, the Calgary Wild, they're off on an international week. But we'll talk about who's playing for what country and what to expect there. And also we'll touch on a new partnership that they've announced. We'll do some League One recaps and previews. And we'll talk about Dominick Zator and where he'll end up next potentially. And we have an interview this week. Scott, who's our interview with?
Yeah, just before recording this episode, we chatted with Anson Minty, who is a forward/winger for Callies United, and he'll be joining the University of Alberta Golden Bears this upcoming post-secondary season. So we chatted with him about his career thus far and his upbringing in the town of Banff.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't ever really remember an elite athlete coming out of Banff, so it's kind of a somewhat unique story, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's some winter sports athletes from Banff in sports like biathlon or skiing or that kind of thing coming from the Bow Valley. But yeah, Anson is a rare breed in the sense that he's a high-level soccer player, and he talked about the challenge of commuting from Banff to Calgary throughout his teens after he decided that he was going to pursue soccer competitively. Of course, had to join a team in Calgary to make that happen.
And we'll get to that interview in a little while, but we'll start off our first segment with Cavalry FC.
I'm Shamit Shom. This is the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So Cavalry are in red-hot form at the moment. They're coming off back-to-back 4-0 wins. They're unbeaten in 6 games, if you include the Canadian Championship. And they're taking on their perennial rival Forge FC this weekend, who they happen to be tied with in the standings. Jason, I don't think you can ask for a better scenario to be traveling back to Hamilton to face Forge.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, they're on a high right now. They're playing well, and it's their old rivals, Forge. Like when you think about it, if I said to you there are two teams tied for third place, and the goal of the match is to see who ends up being in sole possession of third place, you'd say, oh, well, that sounds vaguely interesting. But it's Cavalry versus Forge, so it's kind of maybe a bit more than that overall.
Yeah, these are two teams that are used to jostling for first place. Although I don't think either team is perennially strong at the beginning of the season. But yeah, these two teams, if we recall, they opened the 2025 season against each other, and Forge won that game. So Cavalry will want to earn a bit of revenge. I think it's good for them to get both trips to Hamilton out of the way this early in the season. I don't think that they've ever played both of the away games in Hamilton before June.
I'm not exactly sure how the schedule maker puts all this together, but it's kind of unusual on how both games are so early in the year. But yeah, I agree. Overall, it's probably better to get them over with. If you wait a little bit longer, then you can really get into some of the suffocating heat and humidity. And yeah, I think it's just better to get it over with and hit some of these really tough road matches right off the bat.
Cavalry are, as we mentioned, in really good form at the moment, but they do have a growing list of injury casualties that you've kept a keen eye on, Jason.
Yeah, I was listening in on the pre-game press conference with Tommy Wilden Jr. and I asked him about what's the status of injuries, and I think the first person I specifically asked about was how's Tom Field doing after taking that nasty ball to the head last weekend, and he said that he's in concussion protocol, which I presume means that he's probably not. He's not playing. He's probably in a dark room and kind of trying to manage those symptoms. So it seemed like pretty much a done deal that he won't be playing this weekend. And then we talked about some of the other players. It seems like Kennedy Alva is pretty much somewhat likely to be back. And we know that Eric Kodza, he said he'll be back next week. For Diego Gutierrez, he made a comment about he's doing some technical training, which I'm not exactly sure what that means. Maybe just skill stuff or whatever, but not really full training. So he's getting closer. And the one thing I thought was really interesting is he said Michael Baldissimo is probably about 3 weeks away. Didn't we kind of, when he said originally, wasn't he sort of expecting it to be like 8 to 12 weeks kind of sort of thing? And 3 weeks away actually sounds not bad.
Yeah, I think that would be what he described after the injury as a best case scenario. Good news that Baldissimo could be back that soon. Of course, won't be available. And yeah, they're missing some key players, especially in the central defensive midfield and left back positions. So there'll probably be a little bit of lineup jigging, but I'm expecting, Cavalry seems to have really been favoring that 4-2-3-1 formation all season long. So I'd be surprised if they deviated much from that, but we'll have to wait and see. I wanted to talk about Forge's form because, we talk about Cavalry being unbeaten in both competitions, 6 games overall. Jason, putting you on the spot here, how many games do you think Forge has gone without losing?
I don't know, like maybe 3 or 4. I'm just guessing. I have no idea.
I would have guessed a similar number, but I just checked and they are 9 games unbeaten.
Well,
They are the only C team to have not lost yet. They have only won 3 of their 7 games, but the other 4 have been draws. So become a very hard team to beat.
yeah, tough team to beat for sure. So right now, a Bobby Smirniotis Forge team and a Tommy Wilden Jr. Cavalry team, there's just, I think, a baseline level of quality that you're always going to have on those teams. And I would be shocked if it's not an entertaining match.
No, look at me. Forge is Forge, right? They've Kyle Becker, Tristan Borges, David Chouanier, Benny Badibanga. I don't know, Alessandro Rappaport and Daniel Nimick. You can't leave them out. I mean, it's one of the most talented rosters in the CPL, and the way that they're playing right now, it's interesting because I didn't think that they hadn't lost a game. And if you look at a lot of their games, they're drawing teams that you'd expect them to beat, such as Valor, for instance. They've also won some games that you wouldn't maybe expect them to, such as that 1-0 win over CF Montreal just over a week ago. So very excited to watch how this one shapes up and to see yet another duel between Tommy Wilden Jr. and Bobby Smirniotis.
Yep, 3:00 Saturday afternoon, and it's on TSN as well, so it's good for the wider audience.
Hi, this is Carly Johnson, and this is the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So now let's move over and talk about the Calgary Wild. They're having an off week this week. It's the international break. The whole league is taking the week off. The league announced the 3 stars of the week from last week, and Wild forward Callie Johnson was the first star, which is great and everything. I think that's the testament to that fantastic goal she got. So, yeah, we're going to talk about her in a couple of minutes about the international players. But Scott, you found an interesting tidbit of information that I was not aware of, and I think it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, today, the day we're recording this, May 29th, marks 365 days since the club was first unveiled at McMahon Stadium. So I guess you could say it's the Calgary Wild's first birthday.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense because I remember that, and it was kind of like spring-like. They went onto the field and everything like that, I think, wasn't it? And it's been quite the year.
And of course, we've seen a couple of games at McMahon Stadium, including more than 8,500 fans in their inaugural home game. So been quite a whirlwind, and it's only just getting started.
The next match will be on Thursday, June 5th at McMahon. They'll play Halifax Tides. We'll be talking more about that when we get a bit closer to it. But right now, we want to sort of highlight the 6 players that have left Calgary and they've gone on to play various national teams.
Yeah, we've mentioned all of these players in the past couple episodes, but now it's, of course, all confirmed. So start off with Michaela Moore and Ali Green, defender and left back. They'll be representing New Zealand, potentially 2 games against Venezuela. So there's a game on May 30th, which is in Spain, and then another game on June 3rd, which is in Spain. We had talked previously that there was a chance that they could be taking on their Calgary Wild teammate, Sonia O'Neill, who has played for Venezuela, but that won't be the case this time.
Sticking with that part of the world for national teams, at least for Australia, Callie Johnson is with the Australian women's national team right now. Her first call up, and I think she'll be hoping to get her first cap. Their first matchup is against Argentina on May 30th. With the time zone changes, by the time you probably listen to this, that match will already be over. And then a few days later, they play Argentina again.
Yeah, on June 3rd. So kind of doubleheader against Argentina. It'll be great to see Callie Johnson hit the pitch. Hopefully she'll get some minutes. And then not too far away from Australia, Jacqueline Savitsky, who's been having a great season for the Wild as kind of their linchpin in the midfield. She'll be playing for the Philippines on June 3rd as they take on Chinese Taipei.
Getting over to Europe, Stephanie Bukovic, the Wild's keeper, she'll be suiting up for Croatia. It's the first time she's been called up in a few years. They've got a couple matches. They played Czechia on May 30th, and on June 3rd, they play Ukraine.
And speaking of goalkeepers, Jackie Burns, who has been the number 2 goalkeeper for the Calgary Wild this season, hasn't played yet, but she was called up by Northern Ireland. She's a regular for them. They're taking on Poland on May 30th and then Bosnia on June 3rd. So last thing we'll mention about the Calgary Wild this episode is that today they announced a new corporate partnership that they have with a women-owned startup from Edmonton called Areto Labs, which I thought was pretty interesting, Jason. This is a women-led company in Edmonton that provides social media protection. So they'll be providing that service to Calgary Wild players through a proprietary AI content moderation technology. Yeah, I guess they're going to be monitoring and removing hate speech, spam, fraud, illegal streaming, that kind of thing. So kind of an interesting, I think these kind of partnerships are probably happening more and more in professional sport, but it's something that I don't think often gets broadcasted or promoted in this kind of way. So it's I just thought it was a fascinating press release we got today.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Anson Minty, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
All right, so moving over to League One Alberta, there was one doubleheader that happened on Tuesday and involved Calgary Foothills and Calgary Rangers. They played at Weber Athletic Park, just outside of town. That's the Rangers' home field. And on the men's side, Rangers defeated Foothills 2-0.
Yeah, I'd say this is somewhat of an upset, but you know that the Foothills goalkeeper, Sam Diltz, he got a red card very early into the match. So Foothills was definitely dealt a bit of a blow early on and had to contend with a man down for most of the game. You know, kudos to Rangers for getting it done, and I think they're having a pretty decent season, aren't they?
Yeah, the men are doing really quite well. The women's squad, they had that victory against Blizzard, but they haven't been quite as successful. But on the men's side, they definitely recruited heavily from Mount Royal, and they definitely recruited heavily with players that had existing League One experience, and they've been able to jump into the league and be competitive right off the bat.
Yeah, definitely. And as you mentioned, the Rangers women have struggled a little bit more than the men have, and that was definitely evident on Tuesday night. They took on Foothills, who are looking more and more like a super team, as you and I have talked about offline. 6-0 win for Foothills in this one. Goals coming from a former podcast guest, Kendall Showers, who's back from her adventure in professional Greek soccer. And then lots of other familiar names, Grace Hannaford, Izzy Monk, Abby Steen, and then Avril Jameson had a brace in this one.
I look at this roster and I'm just like, who can stop these guys? So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. Obviously, you play the matches on the pitch, but on paper, this team looks great, and a result like this, like 6-0.
There'll be plenty of League One action in Calgary on Friday night. 3 different doubleheaders taking place. Cavalry U21 facing BTB, and the Wild U21 facing BTB at Macron. And then at the West Soccer Dome, we've got Blizzard taking on Scottish. And then over at Broadview, Jason, not too far from you, a matchup between Villains and Callies.
It should be a good all Calgary matchup. I think this might be a good place for us to talk about our interview of the week this week.
Yeah, so as mentioned at the top of the episode, we interviewed Anson Minty, who's been playing for Callies this season, and he's off to a great start. Co-joint scoring leader in League One at the moment. So I guess it's a good time to segue into that interview and hear his thoughts on both his individual performances for Callies thus far, as well as the team in general. I'd like to welcome Anson Minty to the podcast. Anson is a forward, or perhaps a winger, with Callies United in League One Alberta this season, and he's also going to be joining the University of Alberta Golden Bears in the fall. Anson, thanks for coming on our podcast.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you guys for having me.
We know who you're playing with right now, and that you're heading to Edmonton in August for your university career. But we wanted to kind of get some of your background. I was Googling you and actually found some stuff about your high school track and field days. And I was interested to learn that you're actually from Banff originally, which is pretty neat, considering there aren't many high level soccer players who come from the Bow Valley.
Yeah. So to answer the first question, yeah, I did do track and field. I did a bunch of sports growing up. I was kind of all over the place. I think me doing a lot of sports helps me today, to be honest with you. Yeah, I did track and field from, I think it was grade 8 to grade 11 or grade 10, and I got to provincials, and I think I placed in the 100 meter and 200 meter. I can't remember which, but yeah, I think I called it quits after grade 11 just because it was being too much. Along with all the other sports, I think that's when I committed to soccer. But yeah, it was fun. And then for growing up in the Bow Valley, yeah, I mean, every time I mention it, people are like, "What? You're from there? Really?" So it is rare in the sense that once you start getting to a high level with, I think, any sport, it requires a commitment if you're going to be coming all the way from the Bow Valley every day to and from for practices and games, etc. So it has been difficult at times, but I also think it's a bit of a blessing in the way because, I grew up in one of the most beautiful places in the world. And yeah, I think it's a very unique and rich experience. And I think it's helped me for a lot of things.
So would you have joined a Calgary club at a fairly young age then and had to make that drive for practice?
Yeah, so up until U13, U14, I was in Banff. Funny enough, I didn't start playing soccer till I was 13 years old. I started pretty late. So, but before then I was a basketball player. So I'd have to come into Calgary for basketball, for all that stuff. After COVID, that's when I started fully committing to soccer. I do have to make the drive every day. It can be a lot, hour 40 each way sometimes, but in my opinion, it's worth it. So,
and so how did you end up joining up with Callies? With Callies this year, what was the process joining them?
Originally, so my first club I played at was Springbank, and then our coach at the time, Chris McKay, he left and he went to Southwest United, and my whole team followed, and that was, I think, U15. And up until I left youth soccer to go to Calvary. I played for SWOOF, so when I was coming back to League One this year, I just thought I would return back to Callies because, Callies is just the extension of SWOOF. So I kind of always knew I was going to go back if I was going to go back to League One because I wasn't sure if I was going to be here this year. But yeah, it was kind of just I already know, for example, the head coach, Pablo, I've had him since I was 16 years old. So I have connections over there. So yeah, it's just going back to home pretty much.
I wanted to ask you about your playing style because, as I mentioned when introing you, I know you're up either as a forward or winger, but do you have a preferred position?
I mean, no, I'll play anywhere. I think one of my strengths is I'm a very versatile player. I can play a lot of different positions and I can do a lot of different things. So really, as long as I'm playing, I don't really care if it's on the right or the left. I would say my best position is on the left wing, but I'll play anywhere.
This year, the League One Alberta season is still, we're still in the relatively early stages, but at this point, you're tied for the lead in scoring. So how do you rate your performance so far this year? You've been able to hit the back of the net a few times.
I'm not going out there trying to score all those goals. It's not on the front of my mind. I'm just trying to, play the right way, make the right plays, not force anything, And I think I have a good team, a good group of coaches, and I'm able to trust them and trust their game plan, and yeah, just go out there and try and make the right play. And thankfully, I've been able to get on the end of a few goals. So, but yeah, it's not the main thing. It's just trying to play the game the right way.
Anson, we wanted to ask you because we did see that you were also involved with Cavalry, right? And you mentioned, can you talk about how that opportunity came up and how maybe playing with, the U21s of a pro club impacted your personal and professional growth as a player?
No, yeah, Calvary was awesome. At the end, ultimately, it didn't really work out, which is fine, stuff like that happens. But I do think Calvary was good for me, I developed a lot as a player, as a person. I think when I first got there at the club, when I first went there, I was 16, turning 17, and I was with the first team, and I really, to be honest with you, I was out of place. It was that was my first time ever seeing high level soccer, and you know, going to training every day, and you see guys like Camargo and Ali Musi there, putting in work, and you see where they're at and where you are and what it takes to get there. I think that was huge for me in developing these past 2.5 years. And yeah, I mean, it was fun, I was able to go over there, see what professional football looks like, see what it takes, and I was able to forge some relationships with some incredible people. Some people I'm friends with now, and I'll be friends with forever. So it was an awesome experience. At the end of the day, didn't go how I would have wanted it to be honest, but that's okay. Stuff like that happens, so just gotta keep moving on.
So I wanted to ask about the fall, your upcoming fall season, and you're going to be going up to Edmonton playing for University of Alberta. Do you want to talk about how you got recruited and ended up going to play for U of A?
So I originally first heard from U of A. I think I was grade 10, and Coach Martin Anderson, he reached out, and yeah, ever since then I've just been keeping in touch, and I always for post-secondary, I always knew I wanted to stay kind of close to home. So I could have gone other places, but for me, I always knew I was going to be in Western Canada, whether it be Alberta or British Columbia. But I wanted to go to a team and a program where, first off, my education would be taken care of, as well as I wanted to go to a team that I felt would give me an opportunity to play my game, but also an opportunity to win and be competitive in the league. And U of A checked off all those boxes for me. They got a great coach with a great system there in Martin Anderson. I think he just won U Sports Coach of the Year, so he knows what he's doing. And they had a great squad last year. I was able to meet a lot of the guys, had like multiple first team, all conference players. So they had a really good team. And yeah, I just wanted to keep it going, So hopefully when I get there, I can pitch in and we can keep on winning. So, but yeah, that was the main decision was, or the main driving factor in my decision was I wanted to go to a school where I felt like I had an opportunity, but I felt like we could also be competitive, and U of A was the school for me. So yeah, excited to go there.
Have you picked your major yet? Do you know what you plan to study?
Yeah, so right now I'm just going in for open studies because I'll be honest, my grades weren't the best. But I do want to swap over to kinesiology
Mhm.
after my first semester. Yeah.
Lots of athletes take that route, I've noticed.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a couple friends there already, and that's what they told me to do. So just listening to them.
What are your goals and aspirations for the rest of the season, and even just for your soccer career in general? Like, what are you hoping it takes you ultimately?
For this year, really, I'm just trying to enjoy my football, have fun, and yeah, just enjoy it. Last year I had a difficult year. I never really got the opportunity to, you know, assert myself in the league. So this year I'm just trying to focus on playing the best I can play and yeah, just have fun. But going forward, I don't there's not like a singular goal I'm looking for in soccer. I'm just trying to get better, every day, every week, every month. I'm just trying to get better, stay doing that. And I know as long as I keep working and I keep doing that, just trying to be the best me that I can be every day, I know that I'll go somewhere with this game and I just got to keep doing that. So.
Well, Anson, that was the last question that we had written down for you, but we always like to ask our guests if there's anything that they'd like to add or any shout outs to coaches or family or anybody. So floor is yours to kind of finish off the interview however you'd like.
No, first off, yeah, thanks for having me once again. And nothing really from me, just, thanks to all my coaches, thanks to all my peers who helped me be in this position. And yeah, hopefully I can keep it going. And we'll see what happens next.
Right on. Well, we're excited to see how the League One season shapes up, and we'll be keeping an eye on your freshman campaign for the Golden Bears in a few months.
Thanks again to Anson Minty for taking the time to do the interview with us. And we'll continue to be watching with interest rest of the season with Callies and also with U of A. There's one more matchup to talk about on Friday evening. This one's in St. Albert. Rangers will be going up there to play the Impact. And that rounds up the schedule of all 4 double headers for Friday.
Hey guys, Scott Kennedy here, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
Jason, one of our very first podcast guests was Bulgarian Dominick Zator, former Cavalry and York United player who grew up in Calgary playing for Foothills. We spoke to him right after he had gone over to Poland to play for Korona Kielce in Poland's top division. And a little over 2 years later, it looks like his time with Korona Kielce is coming to an end.
Yeah, he went on social media a couple days ago and said his goodbyes. And I guess I started looking around a little bit at sort of how the season's gone for him this year. This season hadn't gone quite as well for him. He hadn't been playing as much. I think he had some injury problems. When he would play very often, he would be captain. So he is definitely a well-loved player amongst the supporters and a leader on that team. But I guess at this point, everyone decided it was time to move on to something different. So, but yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where he ends up because, he's 30 years old and, for a central defender, that's kind of your prime time. So I think there should be a lot of opportunities for him, I would expect.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of speculation on where he's going to end up. We've been talking a little bit about it. He might want to stay in Europe and maybe look for a different team in Poland or a different country even. He did play that one loan spell in Sweden before he joined York. But considering his personal life, I know he had a baby quite recently, so maybe there's motivation to come back to Canada. I think both he and his wife's families are still located in Calgary, which could maybe mean a return to Cavalry. But I'm not too sure if that's what he wants at this point in his career. I imagine he would want to play at the MLS level, but I'm not sure if that's feasible at the moment. So I think until he announces where he's going next, people are probably going to be speculating quite a lot.
For sure. And the one thing to remember, I guess, here is, he has a Polish passport, right? So that's an EU passport, which definitely provides an advantage when it comes to playing in a lot of the countries in Europe regarding sort of like status in regards to like, getting your papers and everything like that. So there are a lot of countries where, he would, as an EU citizen, should have opportunities. I guess the question right now is, what do those opportunities really look like? I'm sure that they exist, but at what level and sort of where does it put you? Hard to know. And I agree with you. I think that MLS seems like it could be on the radar screen for him. At his age, this could still be a pretty significant contract at his prime of his career. So I think that, it may not quite be the time to be, sort of winding it down and sort of looking for your last contract. But yeah, like you said, I guess it depends what you're looking for and how close you want to be to home.
Yeah. As mentioned, I mean, I'm sure his parents and his wife's parents would like to see their grandkid as often as possible. I don't know exactly how Cavalry fans would what they would think about Zator returning. I believe I heard the foot soldiers booing him when he was playing for York a few times. So I don't know if there's bad blood there or if that was just some good-natured ribbing.
I can't imagine that it would be anything much more than good-natured ribbing. I think he would be welcome back here, at least from the supporters and everything, with open arms. As far as we know, like, I don't know if there was any hard feelings when he left to York or anything like that, but I think all that stuff could be, that'd be a question asked to foot soldiers, but I have a hard time imagining that they would have that much of a problem with it.
And you got to think, like, Dominick Zator was coached by Tommy Wheeldon Jr. from like the age of 12 or 13 onward, right? So he and Tommy go way back. And if you think about it, Zator was the captain of the PDL championship winning Foothills team in 2018. So I think we all know how Tommy Wheeldon Jr. thinks about him as a player and as a person. So maybe that reunion is in the cards. But to be honest, the first club I thought about after I saw that he was leaving Corona Kelce was CF Montreal, because that would reunite him with the likes of Joel Waterman and Victor Latourie. And if you look at the MLS table right now, Montreal is down there at the bottom, and they could really use some defensive help.
I think that could be an option. Toronto FC is also not having a great year, and I don't really know what they've got for central defenders right now. But two of the three Canadian MLS teams are not playing very well right now, and probably could use some help probably in more than one position. So it'll be interesting. I guess we'll find out probably over the course of the next few weeks, I would think.
Yeah. And one more thing worth mentioning when it comes to where Zator is going to go next is, he has played a couple of games for Canada, but I don't know if he's on the radar of Jesse Marsh right now. He really didn't have a good last couple of games right before the Copa America, right? When they played the Netherlands and I think it was France or something.
I think it was France. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, was those friendlies before the tournament. I think he really struggled in particular against the Netherlands. So I imagine he wants to get back in consideration for that team, and being, closer to or in Canada could maybe help him out in that regard.
He was on the 60-man preliminary roster for the Gold Cup. So, I always look at that list and I'm like, it's a really long list. But I think I've said it several times on the podcast. You want to be on that list because that means that you're at least on the radar screen, and he was on that.
But I guess we should just mention one more time. All we're really doing right now is speculating. We don't have any insider knowledge, but I am curious to see where he ends up.
Definitely. So last topic before we wrap things up, There is a big opening on Friday here in Calgary. And Scott, why don't you tell us about it? Because I think you're actually going to be there.
Yeah, this will be something I'm covering for work, but it definitely is something we would like to talk about on the podcast as well. CMSA is going to cut the ribbon on the new soccer dome at the Calgary Soccer Center. This is a project we've talked about quite a lot on our podcast. Another indoor soccer field is definitely going to alleviate some of the space crunch that Calgary has experienced, especially in the winter with its indoor field space. But this is a big moment. I think it won't solve all their problems by any means, but having another 11v11 bubble is really good for the city's soccer community.
Absolutely. I'm curious to see what it's going to look like inside, because I think, it's taken a lot of time and they've put a fair amount of cash into it. So I kind of have a certain level of hope and expectation that it's going to be a pretty nice setup. So you'll have to give us the full recap, Scott, but good to see it finally opening. Thank you for listening to the Wow I See Soccer podcast. You can have this podcast downloaded to your device as soon as it becomes available by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other platforms. Check out our website at wowicsocccer.com, where you can look through our episode archive and you can find other options to listen, including our YouTube channel. We also have links there so you can buy Scott's book. It's all about the history of pro soccer in Calgary. If you want to leave a question or comment, you can do it in the Contact Us section of our website. You can also interact with us on social media, such as Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, where our username is WowIC Soccer 403. Thanks for listening.